I guess we're on. Are we on? Yeah, I guess we are. Um, Took me so long to get this thing running that I kind of lost the will to do it. But here we are. Once I start a thing, I tend to try to finish it, unless it's a novel. Then I get halfway through, come up with another idea, and start that. I have more half-finished novels than potato chips. Anyway, um, what was I going to talk about? Oh, yeah. My desk is a mess. You ever get hit by a wave of depression so hard it threatens to bring you to your knees? That happened to me this morning. I got up and I was feeling good because, hey, I slept for like 6 hours, which was really cool. And it was like 8 a.m. I got up and make coffee. And while the Keurig is pouring the magical brown liquid into my mug, I go to the window in the dining nook. And I'm looking out there. And for some reason, the concept that my house is too big for me hit me. That this house was built for a couple, which, I was part of when I rented the place back to almost 12 years ago now. No, almost. March of 2022, it'll be 12 years that Stormy and I rented this place. And that thought that I was too big, or the house was too big for me, it just caused a wave of sadness to hit me like a hammer to the back of the head and threatened to bring me to my knees. It didn't. I toughed my way through it and then finished making my coffee and came in here to the office to do nothing. Shit. Okay, in a way it's good, but it's also very annoying. Cigarettes these days are made to go out if you don't puff on them every minute or so. I think actually, which for me, economically is a good thing because otherwise I will light a cigarette and like you see, I for the most part it usually sits in the ashtray. I'm holding it in my hand in order to hold something in my hand while I do this. But light it, puff on it once, put it in the ashtray, and then it would burn out. And especially when I was smoking non-filters, I would just have this long tube of ash sitting there, usually in the ashtray and spilling over onto the table, desk, usually desk. I've always had a desk. Desks make me feel like I'm working when I don't. But anyway, yeah, they designed them to do that as a fire safety precaution because apparently a lot of people were doing exactly what I was doing. They would light the cigarette, they would put it in the ashtray, or it would be in their fingers, and they would fall asleep. And the cigarette would, end up burning something and burn up the whole house, which I never could understand the rug or floor or desk or whatever the burning cigarette fell on, they have to be pretty fucking flammable. You see in the movies where they light the cigarette and toss it into the puddle of gasoline, and whew, it blows up. Well, okay, I've tried that. Not that I was trying to blow myself up or anything like that, but as a young man, um, some friends of mine and I became fascinated with explosives. So we made our own bombs. We would buy black powder, stuff it into pill bottles. You can get the cannon fuse, usually in the same place you buy the black powder. And in New York State, it was at any small sporting goods store. Bob's Fishing and Tackle. You could go there. You could buy cans of black powder and rolls of cannon fuse. And so we would make our own bombs. And there was this pond that we would go, and we would throw them in the pond to watch them blow up, which was kind of cool. We've made a mortar once. We took a D-cell battery and stuffed it into the top of one of those pill bottles filled with black powder, a hole drilled in the bottom. We stuffed the cannon fuse in there, and we had this large cast iron pipe. So we would light the fuse, drop the thing in the cast iron pipe, and it would blow, and the battery would go flying out. We made a mistake of doing that in Danny Fanning's backyard once, and the D-cell battery blew over his house, across the street, and into the front window of the house across the street. And how surprised were they when a D-cell battery came, flying in from the sky through their window and landed in their kitchen. We stopped doing it in his backyard at that point. But anyway, my story, so, I wanted to try the cigarette trick. So with a puddle of gasoline. So at this pond out in the middle of the woods, poured gasoline on the road there. So it made a puddle, and so I lit the cigarette. Took a drag to get the ember going nice and red, and then plugged it into the puddle of gasoline, and it went. Cigarette went out. So, now cigarette embers are pretty hot, they say, by themselves, but yeah, it didn't light the puddle of gasoline, so I don't know how they can light tables or floors or rugs or anything on fire. They can, burn a hole in it, but that's about it. So I don't know. Oh, okay. So anyway, but the reason why I wanted to record this is because I guess wanted to get it down for posterity. Yeah. I guess at some part of me, some part deep inside of me, I've always understood the whole concept of suicides increasing during the holiday season, because as Christmas approaches, I have felt very lonely. Because I don't have anybody here to celebrate it with. And I know I've said this before somewhere, that as a kid, I'm used to large family Christmas celebrations. When my mother was married to my stepfather, we would celebrate Christmas with his family. And his dad had married into his second wife was of Italian descent, and there was large Italian Christmases. And in addition to turkey and ham, there was always lasagna. um, and I remember the butters shaped like a lamb, and that would get sliced up to butter the rolls. And then when my grandparents moved back to New York State, where we were all living at the time, they moved back to Rome after the my nuclear family blew up, and we would have holidays there: Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Um, Always a big meal. Hell, New Year's Day. Um, my grandparents of German descent would make a pork roast with sauerkraut, and that's what you would eat on New Year's Day. They, if they ever knew the reason why, they did that, they never said. My grandparents, my whole family was never big on looking back onto the reason for traditions, but they just had the tradition: pork roast with sauerkraut. Um, and apparently, eating sauerkraut on New Year's Day is supposed to bring you luck throughout the year. I don't know, maybe it worked. Maybe I should get some pork and sauerkraut for this coming year. But yeah, big holiday, because it was always my grandparents, my mother, my sister, and I, at the very least. Usually, my aunt and her family would come over. If they weren't over for dinner, they would come over later on, especially Christmas. I would play bartender. We would set up, Graham always had booze, and so we would set the booze and the mixers up in the laundry room on the washer and dryer, and I would hang out there and mix drinks for people. So, and it was always fun, my sister and I, my aunt and her 3 kids, and whatever kids they had, because Dan and Butch and Shirley were about 10 years older than my sister and I. So, us being around 14, 15, and as these kids were, like 10 years older, so they had kids of their own. So, big family gatherings. And then, after Graham died, that kind of faded away. Graham was what pulled everything. She was a force of nature, my grandmother, and she pulled everybody together. And so after she died, there were still pops. And so, my mother and my sister and I would go over to his house and my sister's kid, Brandon, and have dinner there on the holiday. So we had at least that. But, my aunt would no longer show up. And so her kids didn't feel the need to show up. And then I moved down here with Blossom and her 3 kids, and we, did the holidays together, and that was cool. But then when Blossom and I split up, totally my fault then. Well, sort of. That was the end of big Christmases for me. I haven't had one since then. And, sometimes during Christmas, I would, actually, I would be, there was somebody there to celebrate it with. If it wasn't somebody I was dating, there were friends that I was living with. I spent a couple of years living in my friend's basement, kind of like, the troll under the bridge. But during holidays, we would celebrate it together, and that was kind of cool. But I've been on my own now for, going on 5 years. And I keep hoping I almost said expecting, but really, I don't expect it, but I hope for it that somebody, one of my friends somewhere is going to say, hey, come on over to our house for the holiday. Come on over to our house for Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or, Arbor Day dinner. But they never do. They never do. And I guess that was part of what hit me today is that I'm alone and there is nobody else. Anyway, on that depressing note, I will end this. You got 15 minutes of total depression from me. You're welcome. So we got that going for us, which is nice. Anyway, y'all be cool. And remember, don't do anything I wouldn't do, but if you do, take pictures.